A grandmother seemed in shock as she sat quiet in her seat as she was found guilty of murdering her own grandson.
It was a shocking crime that stunned the nation. A 75-year-old grandmother, Sandra Layne, on trial for murdering her own grandson, Jonathan Hoffman.
She said she would take good care of him, and she promised she would take good care of him and that he would be happy staying there with his friends and finishing out his last year of high school. And she never, ever once told me that there were issues.
In 2012, Jonathan Hoffman's life seemed to be falling apart. His sister was suffering from brain cancer, and his family was splitting up. When his parents prepared to move to Arizona for the sister's medical treatment, Jonathan argued to stay in Michigan. His grandmother, 74-year-old retired schoolteacher Sandra Layne, offered to take him in. Layne didn't realize Jonathan had a drug problem. The 17-year-old was addicted to spice, a synthetic marijuana. It isn't clear if Jonathan's drug use started before or after he began living with his grandparents. By all accounts, Layne ran a tight ship. She was determined her grandson would clean up his life, obey her rules, and graduate from high school. Defiant, Jonathan continued to use drugs, at one point experiencing such a bad trip on magic mushrooms that he called 911, convinced he was dying. He was rushed to the hospital, and his mother, Jennifer Hoffman, was so concerned she flew in from Arizona. Hoffman says that she wanted her son to go into rehab, but her mother refused. Layne says she told her daughter to take responsibility for their son and deal with his problems, which Hoffman denies. After the police caught Jonathan with drugs in his car, the teenager was placed on probation, which included regular drug testing. In the meantime, his arguments with his grandmother continued to escalate. Each time, Layne sent her husband outside to walk the dog so he wouldn't witness the ongoing feud. Reportedly afraid of her volatile grandson, Layne called for police assistance during one argument. The police came, but no arrests were made. In this situation, Layne had many options. She could have called her daughter. She could have told the police she wasn't able to handle Jonathan anymore. She could have sent her grandson to rehab. Instead, she bought a semi-automatic and took shooting lessons at a gun range. She kept her new skills a secret from her husband, who had no idea there was a Glock 17 in the house.
And you're bringing a gun into your house, yes? A gun is a dangerous weapon, yes? A gun, can cause great bodily harm, yes? A gun, can kill, yes? So, of course, you tell your husband, I bought a gun, yes? You tell your husband, I have a gun in the house, yes?
Just 4 days after the police intervened between Layne and her grandson, Jonathan failed one of his court-mandated drug tests. Terrified of going to prison, Jonathan wanted to run to his parents in Arizona, but Layne refused to let him go. As her teenage grandson stood in the bathroom in his shorts and socks, reportedly about to go out and visit a friend, Layne went to grab her gun. She hoped the weapon would make Jonathan listen. Instead, Jonathan was shot in the bathroom and again in his bedroom, where he fled to escape his grandmother's wrath. Media reports on the case vary, but at least 5 shots hit Jonathan, 3 in his chest, 1 in his arm, and 1 in his stomach. As Jonathan begged for his life while lying on his bedroom floor, his grandmother left the room, but not to get help, to reload. In the 3 minutes she was gone, Jonathan managed to call 911 and ask for help that came too late. When Layne returned, she shot her grandson an additional 2 times, even though he was lying helpless on the floor.
911, what's your emergency? I've just been shot. Where? Who? I've just been shot. Where are you at? What city? West Bloomfield. Okay, how did you get shot? My grandma shot me. Your grandma? Grandpa shot you? My grandma. with a gun. So,
When police arrived, the weeping grandmother admitted she had shot her grandson. She later claimed there was an altercation over the gun and she'd shot Jonathan in self-defense. But the 911 recording sealed her fate. His desperate plea for help was caught on a 911 call that would later be played in court.
help. Where were you shot at? Where are you shot? Your chest? Okay, who, are your grandparents still there? No, Where did they go? I don't know.
In her police interview, Layne claimed she had acted in self-defense, and that Hoffman had been physically and verbally abusive towards her. But the prosecution argued that Layne had planned the murder and that there was no evidence to support her claims of self-defense. The trial that followed was intense, with emotional testimony from family members and friends of both Layne and Hoffman.
She was always a thorn in my side, to be very honest. She was very difficult, very meddlesome, very controlling, and I never liked her.
Layne's daughter, Jennifer Hoffman, told Judge Denise Langford Morris, "Do not show mercy. She showed no mercy when she planned, stalked, and murdered my son in his bedroom. Sandra Layne is pure evil and, if given the opportunity, would surely kill again." In the end, the jury found Layne guilty of second-degree murder.
I'm just glad that she's put away and she can't do harm to anybody else.
In May 2013, Layne was sentenced to a minimum of 22 years in prison for the murder of her grandson. But the tragedy of Hoffman's death left many unanswered questions and sparked a national debate about the care of elderly caregivers and the issue of gun violence.
Count 1, first-degree murder. Guilty of the lesser offense, second-degree murder. Count 2, possession of a firearm in the commission of a felony. Guilty of possession of a firearm in the commission of a felony.
The case of Sandra Layne and the murder of her grandson is a tragic reminder of the devastating consequences that can arise when mental health issues, addiction, and gun ownership are not addressed effectively. It's a story that will continue to haunt us for years to come. This case is a heavy one. I can only imagine the pain his mother must have felt in the aftermath of this awful crime. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more just like it, please subscribe to the channel. It really does mean the world to me. Until next time, take care, friends.